right, so welcome. My name is Kelly Williamson. I'm with the Plant-Based Kitchen, and today I want to introduce Trish Sebben with Veg Table Foods. So welcome, Trish. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. So you're actually joining the Plant-Based Cooking Summit, where we're going to actually unleash your inner chef. So we're going to talk about tips, tricks, recipes, journeys, information, all kinds of things to help sustain a healthy lifestyle. So let's go ahead and get started. So Trish, would you like to tell us about your company and tell us about yourself?
Okay, well, I have been cooking plant-based for over 20, actually, longer than I care to say. Company, Veg Table Foods, is a plant-based meal kit delivery service with a very strong ecological focus. One of the things that we saw when we started looking at meal kit services, even the plant-based one, was that they generated a ton of waste. From coolers to packaging that was going to end up in the garbage. So what we wanted to do was approach it from, we eat plant-based because of the environment in a big way. And to consider the environment not just with our food, but also with our packaging. So all of our packaging, including our insulation, is either biodegradable, recyclable, and made from either waste or recycled materials. So we're aiming for zero waste when you get down to the end. You've eaten the food and you've disposed of your packaging.
That's fabulous.
So packaging is made from non-GMO corn, or in cases where we can't do that, such as liquids, made from a post-consumer material that is recyclable.
That is so cool. I agree with, plant-based is about the environment, and then to actually look at what you're serving things in or what you're shipping to other people is, I haven't heard of anybody else doing that. That's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're excited.
Yeah. All right. So, go ahead.
I'm also a cookbook author. I've written 3 cookbooks. My most recent is Plant-Based Cookbook, which was published by DK about a year and a half ago. And lots of tips and tricks in there for the new plant-based eater.
Great. So how long did it take you to write your cookbook? I'm always curious about that.
Well, I'm always developing recipes on a day-to-day basis. I think we all do that. I keep a notebook in the kitchen so that if I make something good, I can jot it down really quickly. From start to finish, the process takes, I would say about a year, to get through recipe development and recipe testing and then editing and production. So it's a long process. It's a really fun process. I also edit other people's cookbooks, so I get to see the other
Great. I've seen lots of press about your cookbooks, and then it's all good press, so that's a really nice thing, and it's a beautiful cookbook.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure. So tell us about your journey. So tell us how you became plant-based and kind of moved into that journey. What did that look like?
Well, I was always very politically inclined and environmentally inclined. We grew up in that kind of household. But, we had working parents. My mom was a student for most of my childhood and then became a nurse. So we ate a lot of junk. We ate a lot of junk food. From the time that I was a little kid, was making family meals out of my Disney cookbook, and just always really excited about food and watching those old PBS cooking shows before cooking channels were a thing. So as soon as I was able to stand at the stove and cook for myself, I was into, something other than, fast food or frozen stuff.
True.
So I just got into cooking vegetables and fresh foods. My grandparents were Italian, and my grandfather actually grew up on a farm in Italy. So, with their cooking in their household, vegetables were always a really big thing. And a lot of their food was plant-based without that being what they were doing. They were serving us, pasta with vegetables and a big old salad or a big pot of minestrone. And, that wasn't plant-based food to them. That was dinner. So that's always kind of been my comfort food. Wow. So I grew a little older and had my own place and, was going to college or, as a grown-up, I just moved in that direction more and more for so many reasons. For ecological reasons, obviously because I love animals. I rescue animals. I work with a cat rescue group here in New Jersey. So I love my cats and I love all animals.
Oh, that's great. So what was the first recipe you made when you did it from your Disney cookbook?
Oh, I don't even want to say. It was not a plant-based recipe.
That's okay.
I used to read that just for fun, though, and I was always really I was into the dessert recipes. They always just looked so delicious. ginger ale float and the ice cream sundae
Sure.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm a big person. I love my vegetables, but I like my desserts.
Yes,
So.
I think we all do. Sometimes I think there would be a time that you could switch and actually do the dessert first and then the vegetables second. It would be nice every once in a while. Sure.
Most definitely.
That's great. You're lucky too, because I always wanted to have an Italian grandmother.
She was amazing. Her wooden spoons are behind me in my kitchen.
Yeah.
I things that belong to both of my grandmothers in the kitchen with me. You know, I have my cookbooks behind me, but I also have my little kitchen relics and pictures
I love
of
that.
them and things that, you know, I like to feel connected to that past and that comfort. So I keep their things with me here in the kitchen. It's really, I have one of my grandmother's cookbooks. I learned to cook from cookbooks. So having her cookbooks, her mom died when she was really young. She learned to cook from cookbooks, which is pretty unusual for a woman of her generation. So I have some of her cookbooks here with me. They're held together with duct tape, and they're my most prized possessions.
I love that. I always have that. When certain people get together and then they have the Italian grandmother and it's just the Italian kitchen. I always picture that, and I would have loved to have had that as a kid growing up, to have your Italian grandma teach you the marinara sauces and all those kind of wonderful things that they used to do.
It was wonderful, and she
Yep.
loved overfeeding us, and I've turned into an overfeeder. So if you come to my house and you're in my kitchen, I will probably make you eat something, and then I'll make you eat something else.
Good.
Even if you want me to stop.
I can actually, I know exactly what that is, because when I do cooking classes, the same thing. I don't know how to cook small. When they tell you to do the little tiny samples, I don't know how to do that. So I cook big. So same thing.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, I agree. Great. Thank you so much. So what are 3 tips and tricks for cooking plant-based or for actually sustaining plant-based that you would have?
One of the things that's hardest about sustaining plant-based is to have a job and have a family and come home at the end of the day and have to produce a healthy meal,
True.
hopefully without relying on too many convenience foods. I know a lot of people who are new to the plant-based diet kind of jump in whole hog with the convenience foods. And I mean, I ate a fake chicken sandwich earlier today because I was busy. I'm going to confess, but 99% of the time, I really like to eat a diet of whole foods. So a little bit of advanced prep for me goes a long way. And one of the other things that I do is I teach home food preservation. So
Nice.
for me, having stuff in the freezer is a big deal. And my first big tip is to give yourself a prep. And you'll see that I have a jar here.
Love it.
It's a wide mouth, pint-sized mason jar. And those are freezer safe. So depending on, where you're at ecologically or financially, you can do this either in freezer bags or in the mason jars. But what I like to do is I like to chop my mirepoix vegetables, my onions, my celery, and my carrots. And those can actually be frozen for shorter periods of time without doing anything to them except popping them in the freezer. So I have my wide mouth mason jars, and I have half full of onion, and then the other half is full of chopped carrot and celery.
That's
and
wonderful.
When you get home, I am now halfway to being ready to make a soup or a stew or a pasta dish or, pretty much anything. You have to build a lot of flavor when you're cooking plant-based. And mirepoix is the way to go for that for me. So, I really like to have this on hand. I mean, I have the luxury of working at home most days, whether I'm developing recipes for Vegetable or I'm developing recipes for a new cookbook or editing someone else's work. I'm here, and I love to stand around chopping stuff and, hopefully chit-chatting with a family member who's outside to me or something. But, I worked a 9 to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 p.m. job for many years. And when I came home, this was a lifesaver for me to throw that. You can throw it frozen into some hot olive oil in a pan and just go from frozen. And don't throw out the scraps.
True.
Because that part of this tip is stuff that going in your freezer. So I have all the scraps from my celery, my carrots, my onions, and also all my shiitake mushroom stems because I use a ton of those. And stems you can't eat, but you can simmer them in stock. So once I have a couple bags of this in the freezer, I'm going to throw it on the stove with some water and a bay leaf and some peppercorns and maybe a drizzle of tamari. And instead of paying $2.50 to $3 a box for stock that I buy at the supermarket, I can now, again, freeze it in my mason jars and have it ready to go. And the other thing I'll prep up is salad greens. So this is escarole, and I actually put it in the fridge about a week ago. It's just in a plastic container with paper towels. It looks amazing, and I have salad ready to go at all times. So a little bit of advanced prep will get you ready for the week. I don't like to over plan though. I will usually, if I'm planning out a week of meals, I'll only plan 3 or 4, and then I'll kind of leave myself open to going into the pantry, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and throwing together a quick meal. I found when I used to get really zealous, and I would overcommit, and I would have 7 dinners planned, and I would cook 4 of them, and then kind of end up repurposing everything else, because life happens, and you don't always have an hour plus.
So on your vegetables, when you were talking about and you're putting them in the mason jar, and I'd never thought about putting them in a mason jar. I've always just used the baggies, and I love it because it's, environment, sustainable, all those type of things. How long does those actually stay in the jar? How long do they stay fresh?
About 2 months.
2 months?
Okay. Like that, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll do baggies too, and you can always remember, if you don't want to do the mason jars, you don't have the means to do the mason jars, you can rinse and reuse those baggies that you put in the freezer a billion times.
Love it. And I love too that that's the paper towel, because it's one of the things that you can either put like a white cotton towel or a paper towel on the thick greens, and it actually keeps them nice and fresh too, which you don't get that mushy, which is really bad.
Well, that's week old escarole, and I'm gonna, when we're done here, I'm gonna take that mirepoix and that escarole and a can of beans, and I'm gonna make lunch.
That's great.
10 minutes.
Thank you. All right. So, favorite recipe. This is like one of my most favorite parts. So, favorite recipe that you have, it's your go-to recipe all the time, and then some of the tips and tricks that you actually do to make that recipe come out the same every single time.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of favorites for my easy desperation meals. Because the rest of the time I'm really experimenting and doing new stuff and having a great time with that. But my favorite things to cook, definitely pasta dishes and definitely soups and stews. So I try to have some things on hand in the pantry all the time. As much as I keep a ton of dried beans around, I always have a couple of cans of beans, whether it's white beans or lentils in the pantry. I always have some pasta. I always have onions, garlic, celery, and carrots, whether it's up in the freezer or it's sitting in a basket on the counter. And I have my vegetable stock, whether I've made it or in moments of desperation, keep that box on hand, because some days you need it. But, just things where I can, let's say, make broccoli sauteed in garlic and oil mixed with a little pasta with some white beans. When you do really simple stuff like that, or kale and some vegetable stock and some beans and lots of garlic and crushed red pepper, my biggest tip though for making it taste really good every time, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the same every time. I don't know that I've ever served the same meal twice unless I'm recipe the same. And then of course it'll be the same thing over. It's just me cooking in the kitchen. I'm probably not going to make it the same thing twice, but it's always going to taste really good. And the reason why is that I season my food. I've been cooking for a long time, and of course we get a lot of feedback from readers of cookbooks and vegetable customers. And whenever somebody tells me that they don't cook with salt and pepper, I tend to, the top of my head kind of a little bit. A little bit of salt and pepper is not hurting you, everybody. Salt your pasta water and season your food. When that mirepoix hits the pan, salt it a little bit. When your garlic goes into the pan, salt it a little bit. That's going to help your vegetables release their liquid and their flavor. It's going to help them to brown. It's going to develop flavor. And it's also going to keep your family from reaching for the salt shaker at the table. Unseasoned food does not taste like food. And salt and pepper is the building blocks of flavor. Yep. So what I would say is have a well-stocked pantry, to make your favorite meals. Pasta puttanesca is a big one for me. So I like to have fruit on hand. I like to have garlic and a can of tomatoes, whether it's from the garden. I didn't get as many this year from the garden, so I'm going to, grab a can out of the pantry and, just toss it together with some pasta. And again, I'm going to season it and I'm going to make it taste really good. And taste while you're cooking. That helps.
I agree with the salt, because a lot of people are saying don't do the salt and don't do the pepper. But at the same time, as if you season it along the way and you actually, you're adding just a little bit here and there, you actually add less than if somebody sits at the table and uses the salt shaker. So, yeah.
You're never going to get that back. Once you haven't seasoned your food and you put seasoned food on the table, you're never going to get to the point where it's going to taste good, no matter how much salt you put in. And your body does need a little bit of salt. Some other things that I keep on hand to build flavor, I keep vinegar, a couple drops of vinegar in your food, a couple drops of lemon juice in your food, and homemade hot sauce from the garden. A couple drops of that is a game changer for just about anything that you're cooking. So taste your food and a little agave, a drop
Mm-hmm.
of agave. You don't think adding sweet to your food is going to change the flavor, but
Right.
all of those things balance each other out. So when I taste my food and I say, this needs something, I'll start with a squeeze of lemon. If it's not quite right, I'll give it another pinch of salt. I'll give it a
Mm-hmm.
little hit of acid, whether, a little bit of vinegar or something like that. And then if it's still not quite right, one little drop of something sweet, a little pinch of sugar, a little drop of agave, usually brings it into the flavor zone. And put it on the table tasting good, and everybody won't have to tell you that plant-based food doesn't taste good.
Right.
Plant-based food is amazing as long as you season it when you're cooking.
So what kind of vinegar do you use?
I have a bunch. I make my own red wine vinegar out of a vinegar mother that was a gift from a friend.
Nice.
I have a nice airy area if you're going to do that because things can get a little funky. I also love apple cider vinegar, and in some cases, probably less so. I'll use a little bit of balsamic vinegar when that's
Okay.
the appropriate flavor. But, for daily use, the apple cider vinegar and the homemade red wine vinegar are the biggies.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's what the apple cider vinegar is really good and stuff. It adds that nice tart taste and stuff, and then the red wine is not as tart. But I agree with that. It's that nice kind of citrus, but kind of that tart flavor is really, really good. I agree with that.
Absolutely. And I really, I cook more so with vinegar now than I used to because, as a company that ships ingredients to people, we can't ship wine. I can suggest that, if let's say you replace a little bit of the vegetable stock or water in your recipe with wine, but we can't send it to you. So I find that to help people along on that flavor journey, that sending them a little bit of vinegar to add to the food kind of brings those red wine flavors in without having to put wine in the food or in a box that we're sending.
True.
Food. Yeah.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about your specialty focus. So I know that you've got the vegetables, so you're doing the foods and the products and stuff that you're shipping. So tell us a little bit more about that and how you kind of come up with some of the recipes and what it looks like. So if they were going to order from you, what that would look like.
Okay, well, whether I am developing a recipe for vegetable or for a cookbook that I'm working on, my biggest focus, I have sort of a two-pronged attack. Number one is time. I really like my recipes to come in under an hour. For vegetable, we shoot for 30 to 45 minutes
Nice.
because our customers are busy. A lot of them are not all the time plant-based eaters. The majority of our customers aren't vegan. They just want to eat better. But they also want to come home at the end of the day and make a good meal without driving themselves crazy.
Sure.
So I try to come in at around the 30 to 45 minute mark. I try to introduce new techniques wherever possible. This week we shipped a wonton soup recipe where you make your own cheesy spinach wontons and then cook them in a nice quick broth, which is like a 30-minute recipe, which is great. And I also think a lot about nutrition. Just because it's plant-based, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting full nutrition. There are a lot of things in the plant-based diet that you have to try a little harder to get, like calcium and like iron. So I try to choose foods when I'm developing a recipe. And like I said, I eat potato chips, I eat junk, but when I sit down to dinner, I really want to go for nutritionally dense food. So I try to look at that. And then as far as just the recipe development process, I'll cook something a bunch of times. I'll feed it to a bunch of people, get some feedback, and then always taking notes. As far as what our customers experience, they get an email the week before that tells them what's on the menu. We do a single meal for 2 people, or we do 3 meals for 2 people.
Nice.
And you can go back and forth between that. You can always pause depending on your schedule. So we ship out on Monday afternoon, and on Tuesday, you're going to get a box on your front doorstep, and you're going to open it up, and all of the recipes will be there. When I write the recipes, they're step by step. There's a photo, there's an introduction, and then there are tips and tricks for making you a little bit more successful. And then you're going to see a little bag with all of your ingredients, and then you're going to have your produce. So it's super simple. Put everything in the fridge, and when you're ready to cook one of those recipes, just get out your recipe card, get out the little bag, get out your fresh produce, and really 45 minutes or less later, you can sit down and eat something delicious that is hopefully, in a lot of cases, new to you, or just a really comforting flavor of something that you already love but maybe haven't experienced in a plant-based format.
Wonderful. So like wonton, you said wonton soup was one of the recipes and stuff that you just did. What's some of the other recipes that you've actually shipped out, if you don't mind sharing?
We've been shipping since last May, so we've shipped out tons of recipes. Some of my favorites were seasonal, things that we would only do in the summer. I did a mushroom BLT sandwich this summer, and I personally went to my favorite farm and picked out the tomatoes that each of our customers were going to get.
Nice.
We did a ratatouille recipe. This Right, today when we're done here, I'm working on a lentil cottage pie, and to lighten up the cottage pie, instead of all mashed potatoes on top, I'm doing half mashed potatoes and half cauliflower. Really healthy, delicious, and we're looking for ways to make that deep comfort food flavor. We do pasta recipes, tofu summer rolls. We work with an amazing seitan company, Michael Savory Seitan, and I love to do seitan recipes. Seitan gyros are one of my favorite. We have a seitan carnitas taco.
That sounds wonderful.
A few weeks ago, I shipped an African peanut stew that was just really great veggies and rice and this delicious, flavorful sauce. So I have tons of favorites, lots and lots of recipes, and we're usually out of the 3, we're shipping 2 new recipes at least per week.
So what made you get into this? So as far as delivering foods and helping people do all this, what was the kind of like catalyst that moved you into this versus cookbooks? Writing cookbooks, even though you're still doing that.
Well, I am still doing that, and my business partner Ed was actually the one who came up with the idea that he wanted to do the plant-based meal delivery service, and his wife is a good friend of mine, and also my hairstylist. So it's just one of those moments of kismet where you end up, hooking up with somebody who, Ed has a lot of skills that I don't have as far as the logistical side of it, and I had the ability to create tons of new recipes, and I already had the experience of creating plant-based food for people who might not have a plant-based palate, so I think we complement one another tremendously, and I think both of us really wanted to have a business where we could put our ideals into action all the time, and that is one thing, we haven't been doing this for a year yet, but I would say that that's one thing that we've been super successful at is living up to our ideals in our business in every way that we can.
Wonderful. So do you have like a big warehouse, or do you do it somewhere? How do you?
We're renting incubator space right now.
Nice.
So
okay.
We work in a location with lots of other startup businesses.
Oh, that's great.
We hopefully soon, and maybe within the next year, we'll need our own warehouse space. We would love that. Right now we ship on the East Coast, from Vermont all the way down to Washington, D.C. And as we grow, we'll be expanding that area. So, hopefully nationwide, and hopefully having a couple of distribution centers would be wonderful. And we can't wait for that.
Back East is very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Now we just need to have you come into like Midwest area type of that would be great.
Working our way westward.
That would be wonderful. So you said something a little bit earlier about some pantry. So you said pantry tips and tricks. So like you said that you have like tomatoes on hand and beans on hand and things like that. Is there like certain things that no matter what you always make sure that you have?
No matter what, I always have onions and garlic.
Yep.
You can't make something good without onions and garlic. I always try to have some kind of pasta. I have about 1 million kinds of pasta. Pastas, rice, lentils, quinoa, things like that. Dry goods, I store those in mason jars wherever I can in the pantry, and they're labeled. And if it's something that has weird instructions like freeka, I will also put the instructions right on the package. It'll stay fresher longer that way, maybe if you're not getting to it quite as quickly. And also, I've had those moments where I bought some grain that I hadn't worked with before, and then all of a sudden I realized it's stuck it in a mason jar and I don't remember what the liquid ratio is. So I always try to put that on the package. The other thing that I always try to have, whenever I make a soup or a stew or anything like that, I double it, and I put one in the freezer. So if you have a quart of soup or stew already made, you have the building blocks of an amazing dinner. You just have to make a salad and maybe get some great bread from local bakery if you need bread. And I like to have emergency food on hand, and soups and stews are a really big one for me because you can get a lot of nutrition and a lot of different flavors in one dish. So I'm big on the freezer, and I'm big on just keeping those beans and pastas and flavoring agents, like I said, like capers and stuff like that. Have that on hand, and you'll never be hungry because you can always whip up a meal in less than half an hour.
So you mentioned freeka. What is freeka?
Freeka is one of the ancient grains, and it's something that we've been playing with a little bit. We did a freeka with a pistachio kale pesto and roasted vegetables. It's fun to try our single meal box is actually gluten-free so that we can appeal to, the widest number of people, because I know a lot of people do that now. But I like to play around with grains. You can get a lot of vitamins from grains that you need in your diet, and Freekeh is like a cracked grain. It's a little bit chewier than some, and it has it's a wheat product that has a really cool texture, and it's fun. So yeah, I mean, I have bulgur and Freekeh and quinoa and jars and jars of things, so I can always get an exciting grain out and buckwheat. Have fun with it.
I have never heard of it. So I've heard of a lot of the different grains and stuff, but that is not one I've heard of. So I just learned something new.
I'll give you a recipe so you can play around with it.
So how do you spell it? So just for anybody else that doesn't know this grain.
Freekeh.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen it in our stores. It's probably one of the things and stuff, because I was talking to somebody that was in California that has like all these beans and legumes and stuff that are just in great big huge bins in the stores. And we don't have that kind of thing in Colorado. It's usually, the little bags of pinto beans or something. So I'm going to have to look that up and maybe have to order it.
I'm really lucky. I'm 12 miles from New York City. So,
yes.
I recognize that I can get whatever I want. The world of online ordering, I think, has opened it up for a lot of people. You can go online and find anything that you need and have it at your house 2 days later. So.
Yeah. Not as easy as you for going to New York, but yeah.
Absolutely.
That's nice. Did you want to show a little bit about your cookbook? I know that it's a beautiful cookbook, so.
Sure. So this is, can you see that?
Yes, sure can.
Book. So you have 200 recipes for a whole food, plant-based stuff, everything from soups and breakfasts and salads to desserts. And this is definitely a labor of love for me, to kind of take all of my favorites. And one of my favorite things that we did with this book was that we have all kinds of charts and fun stuff. So whether it's transition strategies or suggested menus, cooking techniques, like blanching and things like that, to tell you to do in the recipes. As a longtime cooking teacher, I felt like, let's really teach people. So I'm teaching you how to cook lentils, how to cook rice, how to do all that stuff, giving you some basic recipes for things like pie pastry, sauces, dips. Make your own hummus, people. Stop giving the hummus people. You can cook hummus, and it's like 5 ingredients, and it takes like 5 minutes, and then you will never go hungry if you have hummus. So this was just super fun for me, and one of my other favorite things was that we shot the photos for this book in my house.
Oh, nice.
And it was total insanity, but my favorite part about it was that I got to have a lot of my things, and I'm looking for my favorite photo, and of course I can't find it because that's when I want it, but we got to put things like my grandma's rolling pin in the cookbook, which was it's so special to me just to see gifts that close friends had given me, or things that I love in my kitchen, or again, that rolling pin that was my grandma's, that was always in her kitchen, and now it's my kitchen, and it just kind of connects me to her, because this is really, this is a family cookbook. And there it is, my favorite picture.
Beautiful.
But this is a book, this
nice.
is a family cookbook. It's food that appeals to a wide variety of palates, and I've got pies and a cheesecake that you make with Oreo cookies. So my niece, who was 7 at the time that I was testing the recipes for this book, was super helpful to me in telling me what was delicious and what was yucky. So you can feed this stuff to your kids, you can feed this stuff to your meat-eating family members, and you can have a good time with it. And there are some longer recipes and shorter recipes, but there's a lot of stuff in there that I hope appeals to a wide variety of people, especially family folks who love it.
I love that you have people that give you feedback that something's yucky. That's good.
It's just Rebecca who gives me the feedback. Everyone else is afraid of me, but she is 9 and she is willing to tell me when something is yucky. So I rely on her pretty heavily.
That's good. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that with us. And like I said, before we actually started and stuff, I love your plates, or not your plates, but your pots and pans and stuff that are behind you on the wall. That's great.
Thank you. I like to have my stuff out and ready to grab at all times, and I love my pots and pans.
Yeah.
for me, they tell a story. They tell a story of my career. They tell a story of my family. I have some of my grandma's stuff hanging up behind me.
Mm-hmm.
I have more kitchen stuff than I have kitchen at this current time in my life. So if you went into my dining room, you'd see even more of this kind of stuff. So, and actually, if I turned the camera around and you saw the rest of the kitchen, you would scream because I kind of moved all the clutter out of this area so that we could do this today. So this is the highly edited version of what you see on a daily basis. But I do love having my pots and pans out because I can see them, I can grab them, and I can walk right over the stove and get going without rummaging underneath the cabinet.
I agree. That is probably one of the really good tips and tricks too, of just having everything out and having the things that you need out versus having to go through the cabinets or have to go into the basement or have to do all those type of things. Yeah, makes things easy.
Beneath me is even more storage. I'm sitting at an island that has storage in it, so I can really, for my day-to-day stuff that I use all the time, I can see it and I can grab it really easily. But I also think it makes fun decoration, to have all your cookware out of the wall and.
It gives it a very, to me, it looks just like looking at you right now and stuff. It gives it a very warm look. It's like being in your kitchen. It's wonderful. Thank you for that.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. So, is there anything else that you'd like to be able to share with everybody that is watching this today?
Well, I would say gadgets can be your friend in the kitchen, and I have some favorite gadgets that I use. I have an immersion blender that never sees the inside of a cabinet. I have my very ancient bar blender that I use. I don't have one of those fancy angled blenders. I have my good old Waring blender that I use probably every day. My salad spinner is in very heavy rotation in my kitchen. And lately, because even though I'm not a no-carb or low-carb or gluten-free person, I have kind of tried to cut back on the carbs a little bit. So one thing I like to do is use a spiralizer, and if I'm doing a noodle or pasta dish, I'll do half noodles because you will fry my pasta from my cold dead hands. But I'll do maybe half zucchini and carrots that I've spiralized to be the same size as the pasta, and half pasta. And when I toss it all in the pan at the end, I'll throw that in, and so there, figure out. Maybe you need a crock pot. I'm definitely a crock pot person. I like to have one thing going while something else is cooking. So, think about your needs and what gadgets might serve you well. The salad spinner is a biggie for me because I do like to prep my greens in advance. And you can also store your greens right in the salad spinner when you're done in the fridge. So it's kind of a double duty, not too much space. I was looking for stuff that doesn't take up too much space. But I love my hand blender, my spiralizer, my salad spinner. That stuff helps me to work more efficiently. So think about what can make you work more efficiently and do that for yourself. Because cooking is a gift for your family, and it's a gift for you to have healthy meals. So make it easy on yourself. Is my big tip.
I love that you mentioned the salad spinner because I think all of us have had salad spinners and have gotten them as gifts or have bought them at some time or another. But they always seem to end up, to me, like even with me, I'll admit it and stuff, my salad spinner is probably under some cabinet somewhere that I don't even know where it's at anymore. So do you use it just for lettuces or do you do...
I mostly use it for greens, but with the plant-based diet, you eat a lot of greens.
True.
So you eat a lot of, let's say, kale, or, I eat tons of spinach. So I like to be able to prep those greens and just have them ready to go in the containers, like I said. If you put away wet greens, you're going to get mulch. So having that salad spinner on your prep day, which, might be a Sunday afternoon, do your escarole, do your spinach, do your kale, spin them dry, store them in containers, and then whatever the last thing you do is, if you don't feel like putting that salad spinner away, just leave your salad greens in there, for the next 5 days and pop it open and grab them out when you need it. So yeah, it's really pretty much for greens. You can also, the basket comes in handy. It's not heat proof, so don't drain your pasta in it, but just rinse stuff if I'm really making a mess in the kitchen. Sometimes if I have greens that have a lot of sand, I'll take the whole thing apart. I'll fill this with cold water. I'll do the rinsing and lifting out part to separate them from the sand, get them in here, dump it out, put it all back together, spin it, dry it, store it. I'm a big fan, and I used to work in a kitchen environment where I had my own salad spinner, and I would hide it from my coworkers. Some of them were known for putting it through the dishwasher, and you put one of those through the dishwasher, it's gone. So I would always have my little hidden salad spinner, and when I would get to work, I would go to my secret location and get out my salad spinner and use it, and then hide it again, because it really is a huge time saver. I know it's a space taker upper, but it's a huge time saver, and I wouldn't want to live without it.
So when you were saying 5 days and stuff that it will store in the actual the salad spinner and stuff, but then you can get longer though if you put it in the containers and put the paper towels and things. But 5 days is fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't want to buy a salad spinner, you can always do it the old-fashioned grandma way, which is to take a big cotton towel and put your greens in there and go outside for this and just wind up and let it fly, and that'll kind of do the same work as a salad spinner. Fun in the summer because you're going to get a little wet when you do it, but I like to make like boobies.
I like it where you said go outside, because the first time I did that and stuff, I wasn't necessarily outside, and then all the walls and stuff had the splatters of the water, everything all around.
I find that's a fun thing for kids to do too.
Yes.
You know, you give the kids the extra roll and the big cotton towel and send them outside to spin it dry, and you know, the salad spinner is efficient as well.
Who needs water balloons and stuff when you've got the old-fashioned way of doing the salad?
Exactly.
Well, great. So would you like to share what you were talking about as far as the gift and stuff for the audience that's watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So we put together a little cookbook, 7 days of vegetable recipes, and that will be some recipes from my cookbook, some recipes that we ship out through Vegetable. And what we'll be doing is we'll be providing a link. You can go to our website and pop in the coupon code, and we will send you the cookbook, and you can print it out and hopefully have some fun with my recipes and get an idea of what we're doing.
Wonderful. Definitely, I know that everybody's going to be downloading the recipes. Just from everything that you've talked about, just sounds delicious. So thank you so much. So anything else before we actually let you go?
Anything else? No, season your food, people, please. Use some salt. Just a little salt.
Exactly. So I got one last question for you. So favorite salt? Do you use just regular iodized or?
Salt, honestly, I like sea salts, and I have a whole bunch of salts. One of my most fun favorite salts would be applewood smoked salt.
Ooh.
Smoked salt is a really great building block for flavor, and I use it a lot in soups and stews. The other day I made split pea soup, and I started by my mirepoix vegetables and seasoning them with a little bit of that smoked salt. It's a great way to get that bacony kind of flavor into your food without actually using bacon. Also, when I make mushroom bacon, which is like a twice to thrice weekly occurrence in this kitchen, just because you eat plant-based doesn't mean you don't love bacon, I will add a little bit of the applewood smoked salt, and that gives you that, again, that rich, bacony, smoky flavor. So, you know, look at seasoned salt. Look at I've always liked, the herb seasoned salts, like Herbamar or something like that. So, yeah, I kind of have a million salts in my kitchen. I also just have a little jar of sea salt sitting on the counter so that it's always like a nice coarse grained sea salt, so you can grab a pinch and just sprinkle it into whatever you're cooking and layer those flavors, salt as you go.
So the last thing is always salt your food.
Oh, please salt your food. Put a little salt in it, you guys. It's really good with a little bit of salt. And it'll keep you from using the salt shaker and refusing to eat your delicious plant-based food at the table.
I like that. So if they didn't get it any time, please salt your food while you're preparing it. So.
Attach it on my arm and just salt your food.
Yeah.
A little salt.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining with us today. It's amazing, and thank you for all your tips and tricks. They were wonderful, and like I said, I've never heard of Freaka, so it's definitely I learned something. So I will definitely have to go out there and try that one, which I absolutely love. This is what plant-based cooking's about: is learning what you've got and then learning new recipes or new ways to do things. And you shared with us so much. I so much appreciate it.
I love sharing it with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So thank you everybody for joining the Plant-Based Cooking Summit. So we are going to be sharing with others and stuff, some tips, tricks, recipes, journeys, information. That's all to be coming. So joining you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, stop the recording there. Just want to make sure.